to make a few comments about the film first, and why that serves as an important backdrop to what we're going to be talking about today. And what it does for me as a gallerist, art dealer, and collector, it shows two sides of this business. You saw somewhat disdain for people who are in the business, who are really turned off by these astronomical prices that these works of art are securing at the auctions. And then you saw the passion and love for the work conveyed by the collectors. So, and I'm always in the middle place, because as this exhibition demonstrates, I offer consulting services for my clients who are selling out of their own private collections. I provide estate management services. And there are many times, and I have relationships, as Ms. Bailey can attest to, Mrs. Walters here, who has an extraordinary collection, and I have relationships with many museums, and I assist my clients in bequeathing works or loaning works or gifting works to museums, and also, as Ms. Bailey can attest to, they buy out of those collections. So we just sold a few important documents out of her brother's estate to the Smithsonian's Museum of African American History and Culture. So let's begin. And what makes art valuable? Now, the easy answer to that, of course, is what makes it valuable to you. But if I sent out an email and said that, you wouldn't be here because you'd already have the answer. So we're going to explore it from my truth, the experience as a curator and gallerist. And it also speaks to where art, desire, and money meet, because there's art, there's the desire, and where the three come together that need money. That's how the galleries continue to exist, the collectors buy, and certainly the auction houses could not exist if these three things did not come together. So in my presentation, I'm going to cover these topics: reasons for collecting, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson, I hope, for those of you who may not know who Joseph Duveen was. What makes art valuable? We're going to look at that from two very different perspectives, from the primary and secondary markets. I'm going to share with you part of the course that I take in determining value. And in doing so, there's market analysis that I do, and that helps bring pricing to bear. And then we're going to talk about, or I will talk about, our current market trends. So why collect? And I know many of you here are novice collectors, some who have been collecting for a while, but these are some of the reasons that my clients have conveyed to me that they are collecting. For cultural preservation, for personal connectivity, pride in ownership, it enhances their quality of life, it's wealth building. Art is an appreciable asset. They find it very gratifying, it's intellectually stimulating. Art is about community, so you come together for opportunities like this to talk about art, learn more about it. And as Ms. Walters is doing, and Ms. Harper has done, creating legacy through their philanthropy and other efforts surrounding their collections. So Joseph Duveen, he really was instrumental during the late 1800s on in developing what we now have as our business and structure for dealers. Duveen's family, he's from London, they were dealing in antiques and rugs. Duveen, in his youth, made a very astute observation that Europe had art and the US had millionaires. This was during our industrial period. So he decided that with the declining European aristocrats in desperate need of money, they possessed Dutch and Italian masters' works. He convinced the likes of Andrew Mellon, William Randolph Hearst, the Rockefellers, J.P. Morgan. He convinced those gentlemen that they needed art, that it was a status symbol, and certainly someone of their ilk and standing in society needed the works that the aristocrats honestly could no longer afford to maintain. And in doing so, he became very, very wealthy. So as his career blossomed, he donated many important works to the Tate Modern Museum. And he, as a result of Duveen's efforts, our museums, many of the most important museums in our country, now have the works of the Dutch and Italian masters because he brought them over. And they, again, became part of these very important industrialist collections. Many of them were donated or acquired by the museums from those very collections. So our Rembrandts, Goyas, and on, they became part of the U.S. collections, museum collections, because of Duveen's efforts. Now, in the 20s, when the industrialists had pretty much, they were really aged, and they were no longer buying at the pace that they were in their earlier career days, Duveen and 4 other art dealers were looking for new clients. And there was one multimillionaire that had escaped them, and that would be Henry Ford. Now, Henry Ford was a very simple man and lived a very simple life. But these guys decided that he needed art. He was already one of the wealthiest men in his country, but he didn't have the status symbols that his counterparts had. So, given the economy that Duveen and the other 4 dealers were suffering with, that their sales were lagging and they had inventory, they decided that they were going to join forces, select 100 works as a group from their collection, so each, had their works represented in 3-volume books, beautifully presented and produced with scholarly text. They were able to set a meeting to meet with Mr. Ford, and they were sharing these beautiful books with him. And he's admiring them, and he calls his wife, he goes, "Mother, come and look what these gentlemen have brought us and sharing with us. These books have these beautiful pictures in them." And they're getting all excited. And he said, I can't accept. They said, "Well, they're for you, Mr. Ford." He says, "I can't accept them." And so, they're like, "Well, we brought you these books and these beautiful pictures for you to consider buying." And he said, "My dear man, why would I want to buy them? The books are so beautiful. All I need are the books." So, needless to say, that sale never took place. And for me, it reminds me that you might think what you have is so important, but really it's the client or the potential buyer that defines what beauty is and what they really want to invest in. So let's look at the structure of the market. There's a primary market, the artist's works entering the market for the first time. And so what do you look for? We're talking about valuation, not evaluating it in terms of what it looks like aesthetically, but how we place value, a monetary value, to a work of art. And so what I look for, especially because I work with emerging artists, not solely, is the artist's exhibition history and reputation. Reputation meaning, how they are perceived in the marketplace. It's really important. The gallery's reputation. What is the reputation of the gallery? And galleries have good and bad reputations. Some galleries handle their clients really well. They're very concerned about building their artist careers, and others do not. So I'm asking you to be very discerning as you continue to buy. Price. Are the prices that of other artists in the same status, career path as, we're doing comparables. We're looking to see what is like and what makes sense, basically. And sometimes there's a match and sometimes it isn't. And a lot of that goes back to the artist's exhibition history. You have one artist who has a long resume of important exhibitions and one who doesn't. then you begin to understand why one work may cost a lot more than another. And then the artist's merit, artistic merit. We're talking about execution, how well the work is executed. And now Alex talked to you about the fact that, yes, I do live in a visual world. So at times I am a little persnickety. So yes, I am looking at how finely executed the work has been done. And that's really important to me in terms of who we represent through the gallery, and also in consideration of the work that, and talking about the primary market work, and also in consideration of the artists who we invest in. And originality. If you start to look at enough artwork and you start to see the same themes over and over again, then you're seeing a period in which artists, all artists influence each other. There's no way around it. I mean, the consciousness goes out there, and artists are often responding to what's happening in our society, politically, culturally, historically. So there may be like ideas and styles that you see. But when you see someone who's deliberately copying another artist's work, I say then, take heed and be cautious. So longevity, that's another thing that helps in the assessment of valuation. Is the artist on a professional career path, or are they a hobbyist? And you can ask the artist. That question can be answered very quickly by simply asking the artist. Or, again, what is reflected in the resume? What is reflected in the artist's bio? Are they fully committed to their artistic career? Now, it may not matter to you, depending on how you're buying and what you want your collection to serve for you, at what level that you're buying. But if you are buying to build a valuable collection, then these are things that you may give more consideration to. And there are many, many reasons to buy, and I don't want to get off into, I want to really stay focused on valuation today, because the collector's discussion is a very different discussion than this one. And so solidarity of the artist market is achieved through market growth and consistency in pricing to create stability. And that's a really important and key point, because you don't want to go to one gallery and see an artist's work selling for $500 and another gallery and it's selling for $5,000. So what that does is, first it should cause you to question what's going on. That can be very harmful to both the gallery, whatever spectrum they fall in, and also extremely harmful to the artist. So when you see the instability in pricing, I ask you to pose questions as to why. And if you're about to buy at $500, but you've seen it for $5,000, I still say be very cautious about that. Something is not right. That is the degree in which that pricing is off. It's just too great a degree. A few hundred maybe, sometimes that's understandable. But if and I've seen the extreme, which is why I wanted to emphasize this. Overexposure. This is really happening for many different reasons, and I'll go into it a little bit more when we get to the secondary market. But that can be very harmful to an artist's career. This quick ascent to popularity and price increasing can be very harmful to an artist. Because, again, what is your career path? Is it one of longevity? And then where do you go from there? And that tends to happen a lot with our New York artists, where suddenly they become the star artists, very young in their careers, and those prices skyrocket, and then they stagnate. And I'm going to demonstrate this a little later, but prices do ebb and flow. The stock market and the art market, they almost mirror one another. Prices do go down at times. Despite the misnomer, it really does happen. I'm going to demonstrate that to you later. And I encourage you to buy works on paper, especially if you're a new collector, because prints are an affordable way to make an entree into collecting original works of art. And I'm talking about original prints I'm not talking about plays, I'm talking about original prints. Serigraphs, screen prints, lithographs, that's what I'm talking about. I want to be very clear about that. I'm not talking about open edition, and I'm not talking about posters. So be clear and have a full understanding. There are many collections that are built around works on paper. And so that's a very good way to build your collection. So now let's look at the second tier of our structure. It's the secondary market. So, and that is where you see a lot of works at auction. And to define that is works entering the market for the second, third, or 15th time. It doesn't matter. Once it's beyond the artist's hands, the primary market, the next transaction around that piece, it falls into the secondary market category. And that is what defines every piece of artwork that's in this current exhibition. And the works can be purchased from a dealer, gallery, or auction house. So what makes art valuable in the secondary market? I've given you a longer list of things to consider, but these are the primary attributes. So provenance, which was covered quite extensively in the documentary, the history of ownership. And beyond the individual who may have owned it, the other stewards of that piece may also have been art dealers, such as myself, galleries, which the category I also fall into, auction houses that have bought or sold work. So that also falls into the provenance of the piece. The condition drives the value. What is the condition of the work? We need to be good shepherds and good stewards of the art when it's in your care. You never know, as was demonstrated in the documentary, what may become. Who would have known that Picasso, this struggling artist at one point in his life, his work would be selling for multi-million dollars. And the Gans family took very good care of it, and Steve went, put his elbow to it. So, but be good shepherds of the work. So, take good care of it. I've had many situations in going in and managing estates where the artwork is phenomenal, where it was in its original state, but it has not been cared for properly. It has not been framed properly. It has not been hung on the wall properly. You really do need to rotate your art. Give it a rest. Follow the same course as the museums do, because they are the people who are preserving our visual legacies for years. And they rotate the work, and we need to rotate the work. And one of my clients said, are you just saying that because you want me to buy more work? Like, no, I'm saying it because I really want you to be conscious about the need to conserve and preserve your collection. And you really do need to give the world a rest. So the authenticity is very important. I cannot authenticate any work outside of two categories. One, the artists that I represent, because I visit their studios and I know that they've created it. And two, the show sculptures that we sell, because I've gone to Zimbabwe many times and I've studied under those artists and I've watched them create those pieces. For the authenticity outside of that, you need to talk to a specialist. I've had people come to me and say, can you authenticate this for me? I cannot. I was not around when Charles White or Elizabeth Catlett created those pieces. I was not in their midst. So, and I also say that it's a word of caution to you. If someone says, oh, I can take a look at that and authenticate that for you, then you need to know that they have the credentials to do it. Because a lot of people want to do two things. Appraise without credentials and authenticate without credentials. And Diallo, can you raise your hand? This is one of a very important appraiser with credentials right here in Myrtis. And she has her area of specialization. And that's what you need to know. You need to go to someone who is specialized, who has the credentials to do the authenticating for you, or to attribute, as was done with the Peter Paul Rubens piece. The gentleman looked at it and said, I know. And I do the same thing. With my artists and with the shown sculptures, I know because I know their hand. Many of their works were not signed early in their careers. That was something that the US and European collectors imposed upon them. because they believed that their signature was their work, their style, the subtle nuances of their work. That was their signature. And then we came in and said, hey, in our market, we need to know that you created it. And in some cases that was great, in others it wasn't. Because what happened in that situation, especially with the Shona sculptors, and what has happened in other areas and other mediums, is when artists see that another artist is becoming a rising star, and the infrastructure surrounding the artist and the work isn't such that it should be, then artists start to replicate the work of another artist. And only with a trained eye and someone who can authenticate and do the attribution will know whether or not that is truly the work of that artist if it's questionable. So I'm going to go into later why it's important to buy from the right source. So exposure, the exhibition history, and or how does the piece appear in a catalog resume. And this is something that all artists should be responsible for creating. Technology these days is so easy for you to, a catalog resume is a history of the work, the artist's production. And for our masters, such as Picasso and Van Gogh, and everyone, they have them. But for our artists today, they need to be responsible for doing this as well. Again, you never know where the career will land. So be responsible for documenting everything before you release it to the world that you have in your possession. I'm telling you, I've seen crazy things happen, and the simplest thing of taking a picture would have dispelled all concerns and mystery surrounding a work of art. And it can mean the difference between $100,000 and $5, okay, if it's done well. And artistic merit, again, the quality of the work is really, really important in determining value. So market analysis. These are, I'm really taking you into my world now. So these are the things that I and my assistant assess when I'm dealing with secondary market work, trying to place a value on a piece to present it for the second time into the marketplace for sale. So I look at comparables. Now, what was beautifully stated by Arnie at the Pace Gallery, and I love this, and I'm going to read his quote. The whole thing of art and money is ridiculous. The value of a painting at auction is not necessarily the value of the painting. It's the value of two people bidding against each other because they really want the painting. And I'm like, amen. And I tell you why that's important to me. I deal with auction houses. I sell consign works for my clients at auction, and I also buy at auction for my clients. And the other part of that is that many of my clients may have work by the artist whose works are being sold at auction. And I've had the conversation time and time again where just because a Romier beard is sold for $95,000, $9,500 at auction, that does not make your piece worth $9,500, even if you have the same print. That transaction, that single transaction and the results of it were the result of two people who really wanted it that day at that particular time. So that amount becomes part of the equation when I'm determining the value, but it's not the sole determinant of what the piece is worth. And I need to put that on the plaque, because I keep having this conversation over and over again. It becomes part of the equation, certainly part of the consideration, you know? And sometimes there's that outlier where one piece comes to auction and it just, I think it was a Hal Woodruff piece that sold for like $500,000 at Swans, and I was in the room and I could not believe. It was like, oh my God, I'm witnessing history here. Now, has anything sold those numbers since? No. But, you know, if I haven't sold one of his works, but I would certainly take that into consideration if all other things are equal, and that is period, the work, the execution, the provenance, all of these other things that get factored in when considering how to place value on a piece. what's a better indicator of what the piece is worth is the current prices at galleries. What are other galleries selling the work for of that particular artist? So when I'm looking to determine what a Romero piece is currently selling for, I'm looking to the galleries more than I'm looking at a single result at an auction. Certainly, there's consideration for the provenance, the exhibition history of that piece, as Ms. Walters can attest to. May I share which piece was yours?
My Duncanson.
She had a Duncanson that was included in a very important retrospective in Louisiana.
Upstate New York at the Thomas Cole House.
At the Thomas Cole House.
And later on at Columbia University.
And then at Columbia. She has a very important connection. So the exhibition history. And Ms. Walters is a very savvy art collector. She studies the art, she studies the artist and the marketplace. But she knew that strategically that was a very important move for her to make with that piece in loaning it to those exhibitions, because now she's established the provenance, also the exhibition history of the piece. Her name is associated with it. She's now a new Rockefeller. All right. So I also look to see who is collecting the artist's work. So I look at the collections. I look at private collectors, and I'm also looking at the public institutions that also have that artist's work in their collection. I'm also looking at rarity, because rarity breeds desire. It's about supply and demand. If there's a lot of work by this artist on the market, then the prices will be depressed. If there is less work, then that certainly drives the market up because it's more desirable. Continuing, the execution. As was demonstrated with the Picasso, not everything that an artist makes is brilliant, all right? Is the finest work that they've ever created. Some things are good in the studio, others are not. But if you have star quality, and Picasso certainly does, it's like whatever Picasso's done, we want it. We don't care what she looks like, we're gonna buy it and we're gonna pay millions for it. So, but he again is the outlier. So, execution does become a strong part of the consideration. The date of the execution. There are certain periods, like Picasso had his blue period. Those works may be more desirable than others. So the date of the execution becomes important. Some people are looking to buy earlier works by a particular artist, or a latter work by a particular artist. So that becomes part of the value and consideration. And certainly the condition that I want to emphasize, be good stewards of the work. The condition of the work is important. And the bibliography, who's written about the work? What books has the work been featured in? Which art critics have written about it? What's the scholarly discourse around the art and the artist, or the exhibition that the work was featured in? Signatures and inscriptions. Is the work signed? If you purchase the work by an artist and you know the artist and it's not signed, go back to that artist and ask them to kindly sign it. Sometimes it's forgotten, and it's not a good thing. Ask for a signature. And inscriptions. Sometimes artists make really lovely notes. Picasso probably wrote a love letter or something on one of the paintings to his lovely mistress. And so that also, for the art historians and the museum people especially, who love those things, and the critics, that brings added consideration in terms of value. The dimensions. I mentioned that because size dictates money. So logically, a smaller piece would sell for less than a larger piece. And then there's also this consideration for medium. I didn't really want to go into that, but prints tend to sell for less than works on canvas. A bronze sculpture will sell for more than a stone piece. And of course, that depends on size. But so those are just some things to consider. And the subject matter. What an artist is mostly known for, what is synonymous with his work, is often what is most desired. For example, this is a David Briscoe piece, and this is a David Briscoe piece. Yes, exactly. So most people would gravitate towards the abstract because that is what he's known for. He was commissioned to do this portrait of Judith when she was 2 years old by the same family. They were friends of Dr. Bedolla at the time. So, subject matter. So, this one is not any less valuable to the family, but in terms of the marketplace, it was priced less because he is not known for doing portraiture. So, taking you to another level. This is actually a graph out of one of the reports that I've created for one of my clients. Business major marketing analysis stuff that goes on in my head. So these are the auction results, and I've taken out some of the information just for the client's confidentiality. So these are the auction results of a particular artist from May 2002, no activity between 2003 and 6, and then 07 there was 3 sales, 4. 09 we had more activity, 2011, and then 2 sales in 2013. So this demonstrates again the ebbs and flows. These are all paintings by the artist. Okay? And then there were works that were bought in. And that means, and the auction houses are very clever about this, they don't want you to walk away saying the piece did not sell. So the term is, it was bought in. Because, that's negative connotations. So the pieces, some of the pieces that were offered at auction were bought in. They did not sell. So we break it down even further because dimensions matter. And these are the prices per square inch. Because we have to look at size. So we can't just say that, the most expensive piece was $6,500. Well, what was the size of it? And what does that equate to per square inch? So, I don't bore you with the charts, but I just wanted to give you a kind of an insight into my world and also dispel the misnomer that pricing is arbitrary. For some, perhaps it is. For me, it is not. I feel a very important, I know that I play an important role, or I try to, in sustaining the marketplace and not undervaluing or overvaluing the artist's work. And the only way to do that is to make a study of the market. To make a study of the market and really have the prices reflect that. So let's look at the market trends. I'm almost done. So these are 5 things that drive, especially the secondary market. We have death, which is the estates. We have divorce. When I have clients come in and say, I got this because it was his most favorite piece. I don't want it and I want to sell it. I'm like, okay. We have debt. Sometimes people sell because they need money and art is a good investment. There is demand, of course, that drives the market. And dealing. And this is when collectors want to sell, as demonstrated here, out of their own collections to buy another piece. They've invested in a piece years ago, it's appreciated in value, and they now want to sell it to fill a void in their collection. And then there's deaccession, and that's what the museums do. And it does happen at times. It's rare, but there are times when a work will come to auction, or maybe even in my hands, that a museum wants to sell. So here are the trends, and here are the trendsetters. So we have the auction houses, the galleries, and museums. And under that, the subcategories are the art critics, help to support what we do by writing about the artists. The curators, I'm a curator, the museum curators, they put out in the public realm artists before us to think about, learn about, educate ourselves about. And their writings help to put the art and the artist into context. The exhibitions play the same role. And the internet, and I should actually put technology, because technology is a new trend. in terms of art making. A lot of artists are using, beyond just the canvas and the prints, they're using digital technology to create really fabulous works of art. And in the auction houses especially, you get the market and promotion materials. I mean, the catalogs that the auction houses put out are just fabulous. But there's a whole team, there's a whole infrastructure there. They have PR people, advertising, art critics. I mean, the departments and auction houses to sell collections now are just mind-boggling to me, the effort that they put into it. But for many, the rewards are great. And of course, the art collectors drive the market, their acquisitions. And one of the new trends that I'm seeing, and other collectors have said this, dealers have said this as well, is we're seeing collectors who are buying historic works and also now looking to the contemporary artist, because just the market trends and the way in which the artists are being represented now, really warrants their attention. And it's good to support the emerging artists, the ones that are up and coming. It's a competitive atmosphere that also drives the market. Collectors buying from the auction houses, buying through the galleries, is very competitive. And we saw that demonstrated in the documentary. And collectors also influence the market through their positions on museum acquisition boards and through their donations. So in the auction houses, the trends in the auction houses, they're now featuring contemporary and living artists. Many years ago, auction houses would only sell the works of dead artists at auction. It's just, amazing to me that now there's so much emphasis on the living artists. And I put contemporary and living because sometimes the artist has passed away very young, but their works are still coming to auction. And they raise the artist's status, of course, in doing that, and it's driving up the prices of the works created by very young artists. In addition to that is contemporary African art. This is another frontier that Bonham's auction house has embarked on. They created a department, the African, Modern, and Contemporary Art Department. So the contemporary African art is really taking off in the marketplace. And also with Swans, their African American art. I believe their department is 7 or 8 years old now. And that's very new in the auction house world. But they have established an African American art department. So there's a lot of emphasis now on African American and African art. In the most part, in my view, it's because in these two areas, the art is still very undervalued. And so now it's being, in some cases, because like the $500,000 is not undervalued. But if you look at it, if you compare the works of the artists who are selling for maybe $500,000, you compare that to their contemporaries, then you see that the African American art is still very undervalued. Okay. So through the galleries, we have the artist status. We look at whether the artist is emerging, mid-career, or established, or now the new term is the superstar artist. What are they doing? Another thing that's driving, and another trend, is the art fairs. And with that, the artists' works are being exposed to the international market because a lot of the fairs are taking place abroad. We went to London last year, and we're just really blown away by what's happening, especially with the contemporary African art in London. Global market is international artists. With the fairs, artists are coming here, the galleries are bringing the artists to these shores, and we're doing the same. And as we saw in the documentary, that the buyers are coming from all parts of the world now, with Russia, Japan, and China being the major consumers of our art. And then we have the online platforms, such as Artsy, and we're partnered with Artsy now. We're still building our content on their site, but they are helping us to reach an international marketplace for our art and our artists. So the last thing I want to close with, and then I'll open the floor for questions, is just some guidelines for collecting. I mean, art is a business, and we do it because we love it and we're passionate about it, but I think you can do it well and reap the rewards of it, beyond the aesthetics to the values that come with it. So educate yourself through art books and exposure, that being come to galleries, museums. I would always love if you just come to Galerie Myrtis, but I really want you to go beyond my walls and see the work that's really out there. Purchase through a reliable source. People are guided by their own moral compass in this business. There are good, really fine dealers and galleries, and there are others who are just simply unscrupulous. And if Google is such a wonderful thing, because I bet if you Google unscrupulous art dealers, a long list will come up. So everyone is not going about this business with the best intent. And I hear horror stories of artists who the gallery closed and took their art, they never received their money. And so that's why I said buy through a reliable source. I mean, things do happen, but there's no excuse for a gallery not to pay the artist and not to return the artist's work. There's no excuse for a gallery to sell, knowingly sell, a work that they know is not an authentic piece created by that artist. And it happens, it really does, which is why you're being an educated consumer is so important. Build a support team. This is where having your appraisers at your side, your finance people at your side, have your collection insured, buying through a reliable source, knowledgeable galleries is so important. And preserve your collection. I want to emphasize that, so I don't come to your house and you have a Elizabeth cabinet in a garbage bag that's corroded. And I've seen them, and I'm not kidding. Doing the estate management has opened my eyes and discovered so many important and valuable works of art. But it also has left me disheartened when I've come in and family members have not passed on the important message to their family, the extended family, about why grandpa or grandma bought that piece, why that piece is important to Aunt Lou. It's not simply taking up space on the wall. For nothing else, they bought it because they loved it. As with the Gantz situation, they sacrificed to buy that first Picasso and bought the work of many wonderful artists. But the information about the importance of who they had in their collection was understood amongst those family members. So I beg you, don't make the same mistake, because I am telling you the truth, where I have walked in and found valuable works of art that have been pushed off to the side, discarded, food has been spilled or splattered on it, and there's nothing I can do. I don't have my magic wand, and no, I'm not going to erase it or whatever and pretend like it wasn't there, because I know, and I'm not going to conduct business in that way. So I just want to close with thanking you again for coming, and open the floor now for questions.
Right in the front. There's a mic. We have a mic for you. Just pass that mic.
Yes. Hello. I just want to say, Myrtis has been an invaluable asset for me. I call my guy. Am I in it?
Yeah.
Maybe I should just stand up, guys. I said, Myrtis has been an invaluable asset for my collection. I call my formal dining room the room that Myrtis built. And the reason I say that is that she helped me acquire my Alma Thomas, my Sergeant Johnson, my Bedolla Pierce, and another piece that won't come to mind. But she's a wonderful resource. She's also helped me, and I'll get to my question in a minute, but I want to talk about her assets as a major collector. And I have utmost faith in her abilities. She reached out to me and said, Pat, would you let me bring some noted museum directors to your home to look at your collection? And because I was thinking, what do I want to do with this art? I've amassed all this art, what do I do with it? And so Myrtis said, so she invited about 5 galleries, right, Myrtis?
Museum directors.
Yes, museum directors, I'm sorry. And the long and short of this is, I never thought that I had anything that the National Gallery of Art would particularly want in my collection. But she said I made the difference. So to make a long story short, thanks to Myrtis, I have gifted to the NGA, the National Gallery of Art, my Henry Tanner piece, Robert Mayhew watercolor, the New Orleans series, and also a beautiful, beautiful figures that's the piece that I purchased from Myrtis. And I gifted to the Walters Museum here in Baltimore because they're interested in 18th century to 19th century works. A beautiful, exquisite Charles Eaton Porter. So trust me, she is invaluable in helping you develop your collection, answering pertinent questions, and she's expanding my horizons in terms of new artists because I'm a master's person, which means I collect from the 19th century, like Duncanson's, Bannisters, Title Browns, on to the Harlem Renaissance. And she's expanding my collecting because I got two pieces that I purchased from you at this gallery, at this collection here, and they're contemporary artists, so I'm kind of proud of myself. Now, having said that, my question, and I'm gonna sit down on this. My question is, you made the, and it was in the presentation that from your perspective in terms of determining valuation, that you look at the size of the piece of art. How does that square with a master's piece of art that's a miniature that, in my case, I have a miniature of Duncanson, and it's the most expensive thing in my entire collection.
Yes, we have to look at Duncanson's work, so we have to narrow the scope if we're going to talk about the pricing for Duncanson. He is one of the masters. He was known for his miniatures, his landscapes. So, and I know that piece. That piece is really very refined. So we're talking, when I make a presentation, I'm always talking about generalities. And then we have to, if you want to talk about specifics, then that's where we have to look at all of the specifics as it relates to Duncanson's work and his miniatures. And that's what I would do in terms of like the grafting that I showed you and the chart. So that would bring us to, and I know that piece, it really is exquisite. And as the Russian lady said, you know, you pay too much, what does it matter? You paid well for that piece. And you're like a Thompson, which I love the way the son expressed his father's passion and love for the art, and how important it was to him to have that piece and to share it with the public, not to, you know, put it away somewhere where it would never be seen again. And so I really appreciate that they really were lovers of the art. And the way he said, oh, my father would look at the sculpture and goes, oh my God, you know, look at the way this piece was carved. And you're the same way about your collection. You come in, you go, oh my God, look at this. You study the subtle nuances in the piece, the artist's style, you admire the artist's hand and everything that was done to create that particular work of art. So your passion is much felt about the work in your collection.
Anybody else?
Any other questions?
There was one person who was in the program who, I don't know if he was a French guy or but
Oh yes, the contemporary, collector of contemporary.
well, he was buying not major artists. He did have an Andy Warhol, but he was buying sort of
Oh yes.
secondary
Yes,
people
yes, yes, yes.
because he could buy
Yes,
them
Jerry
much less.
Brown.
What would you say about that technique?
Oh, I think it's a great
Collecting.
strategy. And the way to do that, and Miss Walters has done that, and that's where like a Delilah Pierce falls into that category. You look at there's two ways to approach it. You can look at the contemporaries of the artist that you really like, but they became the superstar artists, but the contemporaries did not, which is the case with Delilah Pierce. Delilah Pierce was a contemporary of Lois Mailman-Jones and Alma Thomas. They came along, Charles White, Elizabeth Catlett, they came along all at the same time. All were teachers. Delilah focused primarily on her teaching career, and Lois and Alma were more focused on their artistic career, especially Lois Mailman-Jones. So as discoveries happened, and I called in to work on this particular estate, and I started to research the artist and realized who she was in the context of American art. And what I did was contact the Smithsonian Museum of American Art, like, oh my God, we want more of her pieces. Miss Walters acquired one. I sold pieces to several other collectors, and now made a retrospective of her work. It's going to take place at the University. So yes, it's a really good idea for you to look at Joe Blow and you say, gee, I can't afford his work, but who came along during the same time? Because if you appreciate the style of that artist, that style might also be represented in the work of their contemporaries. You know, it's just, what was it like with the abstract period? You know, there were many artists outside of Jackson Pollock who were doing abstract work, but he became the superstar artist, but maybe his contemporaries did not. And the work may be just as good, but far less in terms of price. So that's where your research comes to bear.
Besides the art that we see on the walls here, what other art would be available through the gallery, and just broadly speaking, how does that process work?
Right. Well, I call it my client wish list. And I always, if you're interested in buying work on the secondary market, again, I provide estate management services. And say Lorenzo, I'll pick on him now. Where'd he go? Oh, there he is. He was a gentleman who reached out to me. I forgot how I know we connected online, but I'm not sure how the gallery came to your knowledge. You became knowledgeable about the gallery, but we talked for months about some of the artists who he wanted to include in his collection. He had some voids that he wanted to fill. He provided me with a wish list, and he secured an incredibly beautiful painting by Joseph Holstein. So that's really how it happens, because I don't always have work on my walls that you may appreciate, but there may be artists whose works you're seeking to buy, depending on the period, you know, and because of the work that I do, I'm exposed to a lot of really fine work. And some of the finest work is still in private hands, and it's been passed down through generations. And that's the case with Mrs. Bailey's, Jan Bailey's estate. We sold a piece to a gallery in Australia. It was an early work by an artist, I can't remember the artist's name now. My assistant discovered the gallery as we're researching, doing our market research, and they flew a representative here to get the piece because they had a collector who wanted it. Yes, so it's really important. I do have a lot of access, and people call me all the time because there are very few galleries that offer this service, and that really comes from my consultancy background. Before I opened the gallery, I was doing a lot of work like that. Any other questions?
Maybe you or Ms. Walker can speak to how you actually get pieces and exhibitions and show them at museums and
State the first part of your question, please.
whether either you or Ms. Walker can speak to how you actually get pieces shown at exhibitions and museums to go towards the provenance and the history and just getting a piece out there.
Well, with my work through a relationship with museums, I often get calls from them, and they ask if I have a client who has a work by a particular artist. Asante Walla works for the Reginald Lewis Museum. She's a curator there. Through my relationship with the Lewis Museum, I know that they're doing a major retrospective of Tom Miller. in 2015
Well, we've actually postponed
2020 into 2020. So knowing that they are doing a major retrospective of Tom Miller's work, I have put the museum in touch with Linda Lee, who's actually one of my clients who bought a Tom Miller piece. I told her to come today so I can introduce you to her. The museum actually acquired several pieces from me by way of the estate that I was managing of Tom Miller's work. Again, the pieces had been passed down to the family. And so that's how it works. In terms of how the clients might be contacted directly, Ms. Walters said you brought that piece through the auction house, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
But it was a fascinating way in which they found. I'm sorry. Directly to the gentleman's question, they found me. And the way they found me on the Robert Duncanson piece, which, by the way, is the oldest piece in my collection, is about 158 years old. And in African American terms of art, that's pretty old. But they reached out to me because they saw that I was the auction winner for this Robert Duncanson piece. And I later ascertained that I was in competition with the museum, so that's how the price got escalated, but that's another story. You know what you're saying, when you got two people, and the museum wanted this desperately. So what happened is the gentleman that was curating the show at the Thomas Cole House, Joseph Hedner, reached out to the Swans and asked him who purchased the Duncanson because it was one of his favorite miniatures. And they called me and asked me could they release my name. And I said absolutely. So he called and wanted to know if the piece could be on exhibit up at Thomas Cole. Now you got to understand, Thomas Cole House was from the Hudson River Valley, and that's what Duncanson technique flowed from. So that was just a wonderful place to get a start. And then, of course, when Clayton wanted his exhibit at Bowie State, he was focused on Bearden pieces, and a gentleman named Eric, what's Eric's name? Key, thank you. I haven't seen you all these days. Reached out to me and wanted to come to the house to look at the Beardens because I had 9, and so he came to the house. And so a lot of it is, to answer your question, is developing relationships with the art world around you and with key people, gallerists like Myrtis, other collectors perhaps like me, because we need to mentor other folk because we are the preservers of our culture, and that's the way I perceive my collection. It is a legacy that's going to go on in my husband's name, Ron Walters, and what he did for the African American community his entire life. So those are 2 ways that you can do it. And it doesn't come easy. You just don't up and get a piece in an exhibit. My Charles White Cat's Cradle was exhibited by the David Driscoll Center, for example. It just closed down. And I've been collecting since the 80s. So, and I'm just now getting the recognition, you see what I'm saying, of the collection. So it takes time, patience, and really learning the art world and the key people in that art world. You've got to know.
Thank you, Pat. So I want to talk a little bit about this. Girls, can I talk about your collection?
Oh, sure.
All right. So another one of my clients who has an extraordinary collection is Rose Harper. Her primary focus is contemporary African art, primarily South African artists. And we were brought together by an appraiser, and I work very closely with many appraisers. And if anyone needs your collection appraised, I'll be happy to make referrals for you. Big advocate for that. So I walk in, and I studied in South Africa, and I walk into Miss Harper's beautiful place, and there before me were the works of some of the most important contemporary South African artists that I have ever known and represented their work. So I I was like, oh my God, there's a Misty Solly, Ben McCullough, Director of Galerie. She just had everyone in the room. And again, you know, and Bedolla is involved. I mean, the list goes on and on. So the beauty of her collection is it's a focused collection. The contemporary African art is becoming highly sought after. The period of the artist whose works that she has in her collection are works that were created during the apartheid era, which was a very tenuous period, as you might imagine. There were restrictions placed on the artist during that period in terms of their artistic production. The imagery was restricted. They could only create certain types of imagery. They could only use certain types of colors. Although Sauli, who was thrown in jail because of his artwork, protested and fought against that. He was imprisoned as a result of that. So the works are very powerful and passionate, as you might imagine. And she just has one of the finest collections I've seen. She's also been very generous with her collection. She's a philanthropist, and she's sold works out of her collection to help support many nonprofit organizations in South Africa. So there are many reasons why people collect, and many wonderful things you can do with your collection if you buy one. I mean, you can go about it haphazardly, but you don't need to do that once you leave here, because you know you have some tools, right? All right, so, awesome. Yes, go behind you.
I'd just like to make a comment on that, is that I have been very fortunate to travel to South Africa pre-apartheid. So I started collecting my works in the 70s, not knowing anyone like Myrtis. Had I known Myrtis, I'd probably be very wealthy right now in but a lot of my works, I was fortunate enough to meet Bedolla through my South African brother, who said, oh, I have a lot of these artists. You want to meet some? And I said, yeah, I've never seen anything like that. But what impressed me, like Myrtis said, we were brought together because I needed the work, had to have it appraised. And Myrtis walks in, and she was the first person out of anyone who had ever been in to see my work, other than, you know, the artists or the people that know the work. And she says, oh, there's someone. I said, she knows that person. Then she named everybody that was in there, and I said, oh my God, this woman really knows. But the education that I have been fortunate enough to receive since Myrtis has been my curator has been awesome and invaluable. I mean, every time I come to a session, I learn something else. You know, I also have some Ed Whites that are pretty substantial pieces, and so I'm very excited each time I come. And so I know more homework that I have to do, and then I got to get this done. But I want to thank you for the educational process that you have continued to share with collectors and non-collectors as well about what we should be doing, how we should be doing it, and you know, the importance of just investing in art as an asset, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any more questions? I don't want to keep you too long. But I'm going to share one little anecdote with you about trusting the experts. This client is not in the room, so I'm going to approach this very gently. So I showed you my charts. We conduct, I'm sorry, I shared my charts with you. We conduct very extensive research on determining pricing. So I have a very important historic piece in my possession that I was from a collection in the state and presented it for sale. I appraised the piece, or not appraised, I determined that the value was between $20,000 and $25,000. Presented it before a potential buyer who was willing to buy it immediately. However, my client So the numbers don't lie. I can't put a value on sentimental value. I can't put a dollar amount to sentimental value. I can only share with you what the market dictates to me. That is what becomes the bottom line in my gallery. Now, what we feel is one thing. Boy, if I could put a dollar amount to that, I'd be so rich. But I can't go by what you feel. I've got to go by what the market dictates to be ethical in this. So, I wanted to share that with you because that's one of those moments where Alex was like, yes. And unfortunately, we didn't sell it, so we didn't reap the benefits of the commission. But what it did for me, because sometimes there's a moment of self-doubt, and I thought, gosh, I know it was really hard for that client, on that client's behalf. I know my research, my numbers were sound, and I just couldn't find buyer beyond those numbers. And it went to market, the auction house rather, and it ended up selling for $5,000. And I'm like, you know what? That feels good. And not because I begrudge the client, only because I knew that what I had proposed was right. And my expertise and my experience is sound. And, and so I just feel really good about having been ethical in it. I guess that's ultimately what I want to share.
It's like a living artist or a dead artist?
No.
Okay.
So there's no more
contribute to the value of
Correct.
the artist's work.
Right, so that the art, I should have said that the artist is no longer living. There's no more production. The work was a very important work. And the exhibition history behind that piece was very impressive. But the client was like, wait a minute, I feel like it should be 65,000, 80,000. I was like, ew, boy, we're really off. Let me go back and rethink that. And I went back and looked at my numbers and I'm like, there is no way, there's nothing that I can do to support this. I cannot substantiate this with any information that I have. So if you, I always feel like I'm in this to learn. So if you can provide me with numbers that support that, then I'm on board because the greater the price, certainly my commission will be greater. This is how we exist here. But when it doesn't come together in that way, if I can't make any sense of it, then I have to back off from it because my reputation is like the only thing that I have that is in the world. And so I really guarded very fiercely and felt like I just have to return it because I just couldn't present the numbers and was not able to sell it at the price that was being asked.
If they buy it as an investment piece, do you know what they
No.
paid for the piece?
Yes, it was inherited.
Oh, so
Yeah, so the person was not a collector.
he didn't make a very good decision if he did not have a financial investment in it.
And I think the belief was because the piece had such a prestigious exhibition history that placing it before a larger audience, I'm sure that the strategy was that it was going to be really sought after and the price was going to be driven up. To tell you the truth, when I saw the results, I was very sad because I thought, oh my God, what a loss. What a loss.
Yeah.
But again, in this business, the auction is, you love to hate it.
Yeah.
Because if you can get something for a really good price, then that's a great thing. But we also have to remember, that number goes into that equation of valuation. And if you get the other extreme, then, it just throws everything out of whack. So you have to